Taman Park wiped the grease from his hands and looked up at the dusty sky of Colony 7. The freight depot was quiet today, just the way he liked it. 7 years had passed since the war ended, and he had built a simple life here on the edge of human space. No uniforms, no orders, no death. Just him, his ships, and the endless task of moving cargo between the outer worlds. His friend Jin Woo called out from under a transport ship. "Hey, boss. This engine is making that noise again." "We need new parts," Taman smiled. Jin Woo always found something wrong with the ships. It kept them both busy and helped push away the memories. "Order what you need. The next supply run pays well." That's when he saw it. A dark shape moving across the orange sky, too smooth and silent to be human technology. Taman's old instincts kicked in. His hand moved to where his weapon used to hang but found only empty air. He hadn't carried a gun in 3 years. The ship landed without a sound in the center of his depot. It was beautiful and deadly, made of some black metal that seemed to drink in the light. Taman knew that design. He had seen it before in the war. It was a shanty. Jinwoo crawled out from under the transport, his eyes wide. "Boss, what do we do?" "Stay calm," Tamin said, but his heart was racing. The war was over. There should be no Ashanti ships in human space. A peace treaty kept both sides apart. So why was one here? The ship's door opened like a flower blooming in reverse. Steam came out, and then figures began to emerge. They were tall and elegant, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow in the afternoon light. They wore armor that looked more like art than protection, but Taman only had eyes for the one in the center. She was taller than the others, with silver hair that moved like liquid metal. Her eyes were the color of deep space, dark blue with tiny points of light. She wore a crown that seemed made of captured starlight. Taman knew her face. He had saved that face once, pulled it from the wreckage of a burning ship while explosions lit up the void around them. Queen Veltara of the Ashanti Empire walked across his depot like she owned it. Her guards followed, their weapons visible but not raised. She stopped in front of Taman and looked at him with those star-filled eyes. "Hello, Taman Park," she said in perfect human speech. "You look older." "So do you," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Your Majesty." She smiled at that, an expression that was both sad and amused. "You remember your manners, good. I wasn't sure you would." Jinwoo made a small noise behind him, but Taman didn't turn around. He kept his eyes on the queen who had once been a dying princess in his arms. "Why are you here?" he asked. "The treaty says—" "The treaty," she interrupted, "will not matter if we are all dead in 6 months." The words hit him like a physical blow. Taman had heard that tone before during the war. It was the sound of someone who had seen something terrible and lived to tell about it. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, Veltara gestured to one of her guards. The Ashanti soldier stepped forward and activated a device that projected images into the air between them. Taman saw stars, planets, entire solar systems, but as he watched, the stars began to go out. One by one, they disappeared into darkness. "The Devourers have awakened," Veltara said. "They are an ancient enemy, older than both our races. We thought they were just myths, stories told to frighten children. We were wrong." The images showed ships, if they could be called ships. They were massive things that seemed to be made of twisted metal and hungry darkness. They fell upon planets like locusts, stripping away everything until only bare rock remained. 12 systems have been consumed in the past month, the Queen continued. 40 billion lives gone. The Devourers are heading toward the core worlds, toward Earth, toward my home. Taman stared at the images, his mind trying to process what he was seeing. "How long do we have?" 6 months, maybe less. They move faster as they consume more resources. "And you came here because?" Veltara stepped closer, close enough that he could see the fear hidden behind her royal mask. "Because I need your help. Because our peoples need to work together if we want to survive. And because you're the only human who might listen to me." "I'm not a soldier anymore," Taman said. "I'm just a freight runner." "No," she replied. "You're the man who saved my life when you could have let me die. You're the man who showed me that humans and Ashanti could be more than enemies. You're the man I need." Jinwoo finally found his voice. "Boss, what is she talking about?" Taman closed his eyes for a moment, remembering. The Battle of Kepler 442, the explosion that tore through the Ashanti flagship, finding her in the wreckage, bleeding and broken, the choice he made to save her instead of letting her die. "It was a long time ago," he said. "Not long enough to forget," Veltara replied. "You showed me mercy when I expected none. You treated me like a person, not an enemy. That changed everything for me. She turned to address Jinwoo directly. Your friend saved my life during the war. Because of his kindness, I became a different kind of ruler. I ended the expansion wars. I sought peace with humanity. But now something threatens us all. The projection changed, showing more images. Fleets of the hunger ships moving like a wave of darkness across the galaxy. Worlds stripped clean, left as empty husks floating in space. My own people don't trust me. Veltara continued, looking back at Taiman. They think working with humans makes me weak. Your government thinks I'm lying, that this is some trick to get them to lower their defenses. But you know I'm telling the truth. You can see it in my eyes. Taiman studied her face, the same face he had held while she bled in his arms 7 years ago. She was older now, harder, carrying the weight of ruling an empire. But her eyes were the same. And yes, he could see the truth there along with desperation and fear. What do you want from me? Help me convince your leaders to work with mine. Help me build an alliance between our peoples. Help me save both our worlds. Taiman looked at the images still floating in the air, at the darkness that was coming for them all. He thought about his simple life, his quiet depot, his peaceful days. All of it would be gone soon if she was right. All right, he said. I'll help you. The queen smiled, and for a moment she looked like the young princess he had saved instead of the ruler of 40 worlds. Thank you, she said. Now we have work to do. The memory hit Taiman like a punch to the gut as he sat across from Queen Veltara in his small office. 7 years melted away and he was back in the void, floating among the burning wreckage of what had been the largest space battle in human history. Sergeant Taiman Park had been 25 then, part of Strike Team Alpha. Their job was simple: board the Ashanti flagship and capture whoever they could for questioning. The war had been going badly for humanity. They needed intelligence, and enemy officers were the best source. But nothing had gone according to plan. The Ashanti had been ready for them. As soon as the human ships got close, the flagship's escorts had opened fire. Taiman watched from his assault pod as 3 human cruisers exploded in balls of white fire. Then the flagship itself took a direct hit from a plasma torpedo. The massive ship broke apart like a toy. Pieces of hull, some as big as buildings, spun away into the darkness. Emergency lights blinked and died. The few escape pods that launched were picked off by both sides in the chaos of battle. Taiman's pod had been damaged in the explosion. His team leader, Sergeant Hyun Soo, was dead. The other 2 men in the pod were badly hurt. When they finally managed to land in what was left of the flagship's cargo bay, they found themselves alone in a tomb of twisted metal and floating bodies. We should get out of here, Private Jeho had whispered, blood running down his face from a head wound. This whole section could blow any minute, but Taiman had heard something, a sound like crying coming from deeper in the wreckage. Against orders, he had followed the sound while his wounded teammates tried to establish contact with the human fleet. He found her pinned under a beam in what had been the ship's command center. She couldn't have been more than 20, younger than him. Her pale blue skin was covered in cuts and dark blood pooled around her legs where the metal had crushed them. She was wearing the uniform of an Ashanti officer. But something about her seemed different. More important, when she saw him, she didn't beg for her life. She just looked at him with those deep blue eyes and said, "Make it quick." But Taiman couldn't do it. Maybe it was because she looked so young. Maybe it was because she faced death with such dignity. Or maybe it was because he was tired of killing. Whatever the reason, he found himself setting down his weapon and trying to figure out how to lift the beam that was crushing her. "What are you doing?" she had asked in broken human speech. "Saving your life," he had replied, not really sure why. It took him 20 minutes to free her, using a damaged loader mech he found in the wreckage. Her legs were badly broken and she was losing a lot of blood. Taiman used his combat medic training to stop the bleeding and give her something for the pain. "Why?" she had whispered as he worked on her injuries. "Because you're someone's daughter," he had said, "someone's sister. And this war has already killed too many daughters and sisters." She had stared at him with wonder, as if he was something she had never seen before. "I am Princess Veltara of the House of Stars," she had said. "I am the heir to the Ashanti throne." Taiman had almost dropped his medical scanner. He was treating enemy royalty, someone whose death might have ended the war. But he couldn't stop now. She would die without help, and he found he couldn't live with that. They had hidden in the wreckage for 6 hours while the battle raged around them. Both human and Ashanti ships were hunting for survivors. and neither side would be happy to find an enemy soldier helping their enemy. Taemin shared his water and emergency food with the injured princess. They talked quietly to pass the time. She told him about her world, about cities that floated in crystal clouds and gardens that grew in pure light. He told her about Earth, about rain and forests and the ocean he had grown up beside. For those few hours, they weren't enemies. They were just two young people trying to survive in a universe that wanted them dead. When the Ashanti rescue ships finally found them, Princess Veltara had made them promise not to hurt the human who had saved her. She had given Taemin a small crystal pendant as they took her away. "I will remember," she had said, "always." Now, 7 years later, Taemin looked across his desk at that same woman. She was a queen now, ruler of an empire that spanned 40 star systems, but her eyes were the same. "You kept your promise," he said quietly. "Which one?" she asked. "You remembered." She smiled, but it was sad. "How could I forget? You showed me that enemies could choose to be something else. When I became queen, I ended the expansion wars because of what you taught me. And now you need me to help convince my government that you're telling the truth about these devourers." "Yes. But it won't be easy. Your Admiral Kim still thinks this is some kind of trick." Taemin knew Admiral Donghyun Kim well. He had been a captain during the war, one of the hardest fighters in the human fleet. Kim had lost his entire family when the Ashanti glassed the colony world of New Seoul. He would never trust them. "Show me more about the devourers," Taemin said. Veltara activated the holographic projector again. This time the images were worse. Planets being stripped down to their cores in a matter of hours. Ships that seemed to eat other ships, growing larger and hungrier with each meal. "We found records in our oldest archives," she explained. "Millions of years ago, the devourers consumed half the galaxy before they went dormant. Our ancestors survived by hiding in the deep void until the hunger passed. But we thought they were gone forever. What woke them up? We're not sure. Maybe our expansion into the outer rim disturbed something. Maybe it was just time. But they're awake now. And they remember being hungry." Taemin studied the images, his tactical mind automatically looking for weaknesses. "Have you tried fighting them?" "Yes. We lost 8 fleets trying to stop them at the Nexus system. They adapted to our weapons faster than we could fire them. They learned from every attack, got stronger with every ship they consumed." "And you think working together will make a difference?" "I think it's our only chance. Alone, we're both too weak to stop them. Together, we might have enough strength to survive." There was a soft knock on the office door. Jin Woo entered, carrying a tray of coffee and the sweet pastries that Veltara's people seemed to enjoy. "I contacted Colony Administration," he said quietly to Taemin. "Nari is on her way over. She heard about the Ashanti ship landing and wants to know what's going on." Taemin sighed. Nari was the local government representative, and she would have to report this to Earth. Once Earth Command knew that the Ashanti Queen was here, things would get complicated fast. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Maybe an hour." Veltara stood up, her royal bearing making her seem taller than she was. "Then we need to move quickly. I have more information to share, but not here. Too many people will be listening soon." "Where do you suggest?" "My ship. It's protected against electronic surveillance, and my guards can keep us safe while we plan." Taemin hesitated. Going aboard an Ashanti warship felt like crossing a line he couldn't uncross. But the images of the devourers were still burning in his mind. If she was right, if those things were really coming, then lines didn't matter anymore. "All right," he said, "but Jinwoo comes with us." "Of course. We'll need all the help we can get." As they walked toward the alien ship, Taemin felt the weight of history pressing down on him. 7 years ago, he had saved the life of an enemy princess. Now that decision was about to change the fate of 2 civilizations. He just hoped he was making the right choice again. The inside of Queen Veltara's ship was like walking into a living dream. The walls seemed to pulse with soft light, and the air smelled of flowers that didn't exist on any world Taemin knew. Everything was smooth curves and flowing lines, so different from the hard angles of human ships. "Welcome to the Star's Grace," Veltara said, leading them through corridors that seemed to stretch impossibly far. "She's been my home for the past 3 years." Jinwoo walked beside Taemin, his eyes wide as he took in the alien technology. "Boss," he whispered, "look at those power conduits. I've never seen anything like them." "Focus," Taemin replied, but he was impressed too. The Ashanti had always been ahead of humans in ship design. It was one reason the war had gone so badly at first. They entered what looked like a garden growing inside the ship. Soft grass covered the floor, and strange trees with silver leaves reached toward a ceiling that showed the stars outside. In the center was a circular table that seemed to be grown from a single piece of crystal. "This is where I meet with my advisors," Veltara explained. "The trees help clean the air and provide privacy. No electronic signals can get in or out while we're here." As they sat down, other figures entered the garden room. Taemin recognized Kethvar, the Ashanti officer who had been present during his rescue of the princess. He was older now, with scars across his face that hadn't been there before. "Commander Kethvar was wounded in our first battle with the Devourers," Veltara said, noticing Taemin's gaze. "He barely escaped with his life." The scarred Ashanti nodded to Taemin with something that might have been respect. "The human who saved our queen. I remember you from the flagship wreckage. You could have let her die." "I'm glad I didn't," Taemin replied. More people entered the garden. Dr. Sojin Lee, a human xenobiologist that Taemin recognized from news reports. She had been studying Ashanti technology since the peace treaty was signed. Behind her came Admiral Donghyun Kim, still wearing his uniform despite being on an alien ship. "Admiral," Taemin said, standing up. "I didn't expect to see you here." Kim's face was hard as stone. "When I heard the Ashanti Queen was meeting with one of my former soldiers, I had to come see what kind of trap this was." "It's not a trap," Veltara said calmly. "It's an offer of alliance against a common enemy. So you claim." Kim sat down across from her, his hands folded on the crystal table. "But you'll forgive me if I don't trust the word of someone whose people glassed 3 of our colony worlds." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Veltara's guards moved slightly, their hands moving closer to their weapons, but the Queen raised a hand to stop them. "You have every right to hate us," she said. "We made terrible choices during the war. I made terrible choices. But hatred won't save us from what's coming." Dr. Sojin spoke up from her seat beside the Admiral. "I've been studying the data the Queen provided. If it's accurate, these devourer entities consume matter at the quantum level. They don't just destroy planets, they unmake them." "If the data is accurate," Kim repeated, "how do we know this isn't just an elaborate lie designed to get us to lower our defenses?" "Because," Veltara said, activating a new holographic display, "I brought proof." The image that appeared above the table made everyone gasp. It was a recording from an Ashanti scout ship, showing the final moments of the Kithara system. Taemin watched in horror as the devourer ships fell upon the planets like hungry animals. In less than an hour, 5 worlds and their moons were reduced to empty space filled with floating debris. 40 billion people lived in that system, Veltara said quietly. "Now there's nothing left but dust and memories." Admiral Kim stared at the recording, his face pale. "How many systems have they taken?" 15 now. They're moving faster as they consume more resources. Our analysts estimate they'll reach the border between our territories in 4 months. And after that? Earth in 6 months. My homeworld in 7. Dr. Sojin leaned forward, studying the holographic data. "Have you learned anything about their technology? Any weaknesses?" Commander Kethvar answered. "They adapt to our weapons almost instantly. Energy beams, projectiles, even nuclear warheads. Nothing stops them for long. But we have noticed something interesting." He activated another display, showing the internal structure of a devourer ship. They're not entirely mechanical. There are organic components, what looks like neural networks spread throughout their hulls. "They're alive?" Jinwoo asked. "Not exactly," Dr. Sojin said, studying the data. "This looks more like uploaded consciousness. Digital minds running on biological hardware. It would explain their adaptability." Taemin felt a chill run down his spine. "You're saying they used to be people?" "Possibly. A civilization that uploaded their minds to machines to escape death, but something went wrong. They became consumed by hunger, the need to consume and grow." Admiral Kim was quiet for a long moment, staring at the evidence before him. Finally, he looked up at Veltara. "What are you proposing?" "A joint task force," she replied. "Human tactical thinking combined with Ashanti technology. Your people are excellent at adapting to changing situations. Mine have weapons and ships that your military can't match. Together we might find a way to stop them. And if we can't, then we all die together instead of separately." The blunt honesty of her answer seemed to affect the Admiral. He turned to Taemin. "What do you think, Captain?" "I think she's telling the truth," Taemin said. "And I think we don't have a choice. If these things are as dangerous as she claims, Fighting separately guarantees we lose. There's another problem, Dr. Sojin said. Even if our governments agree to work together, it will take months to coordinate our forces. You said we have 4 months before they reach the border, which is why we need to start immediately, Veltara said. I've already begun preparing a joint research facility. Neutral space, equal representation from both sides. Admiral Kim raised an eyebrow. You're very confident we'll agree to this. I have to be. The alternative is extinction. Before anyone could respond, one of Veltara's guards rushed into the garden. He spoke rapidly in the Ashanti language, his voice urgent. The Queen's face went pale as she listened. What is it? Taman asked. My uncle, Lord Commander Thexnel, has declared me unfit to rule. He's taken control of the Imperial fleet and ordered my arrest for treason. Treason for working with humans. He believes our alliance makes the Empire look weak to our enemies. Admiral Kim stood up. Then you're no longer in a position to negotiate for your people. Not yet, Veltara said, her voice gaining strength. I still have loyal followers, ships that will obey me rather than him. But I need your help to reclaim my throne. Why should we get involved in your civil war? Because if Thexanol wins, he'll try to use the Devourer crisis as an excuse to resume the expansion wars. He thinks humanity is weak enough now that the Ashanti can conquer your remaining worlds before the Devourers arrive. Taman felt his stomach drop. He wants to fight a war on 2 fronts? He's that arrogant, yes. In his mind, it's better to die as conquerors than to live as equals. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this news. Finally, Admiral Kim spoke. What do you need from us? Safe harbor while I gather my forces. A secure communication network to reach my loyal commanders. And when the time comes, ships to help me retake the Imperial capital. In exchange for? Everything. All of our technology, our ship designs, our weapon systems. Full military alliance against the Devourers and anyone else who threatens either of our peoples. It was an incredible offer, more than humanity had ever dreamed of winning in the war. But the price would be high. They would be taking sides in an alien civil war, risking everything on the word of a queen who might be overthrown. Admiral Kim looked at Tae-min. You know her better than anyone. Can we trust her? Tae-min thought back to that moment 7 years ago, when he had found a dying princess in the wreckage of war. She could have let him die when her people rescued her. Instead, she had protected him, made sure he lived to see the end of the war. Yes, he said. We can trust her. Then God help us all, Kim replied. We're about to change the course of galactic history. Queen Veltara smiled, and for a moment she looked like that young princess again. Thank you. All of you. Now let's get to work. We have a war to prevent and a species to save. The alarm started screaming at Euro 3:47 hours 3 weeks early. Tae-min rolled out of his bunk aboard the Joint Command ship Haven and grabbed his uniform. Around him, other officers were doing the same, their faces grim in the red emergency lighting. They had all known this moment would come, but nobody had expected the Devourers to arrive ahead of schedule. All hands to battle stations, came the announcement over the ship's communication system. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. The past 2 months had been a whirlwind of activity. Queen Veltara had successfully retaken her throne with human help, but the cost had been high. Half the Ashanti fleet was destroyed in the Civil War, and Lord Commander Thexanol had died fighting to the bitter end. The surviving Ashanti forces had joined the alliance, but they were badly weakened. The combined human Ashanti fleet was impressive on paper. 200 ships from both species, armed with hybrid technology that merged human tactical systems with Ashanti energy weapons. But nobody knew if it would be enough. Tae-min reached the command bridge to find organized chaos. Officers from both species worked side by side, their different languages mixing as they coordinated the defense. Queen Veltara stood at the center tactical display, still wearing her royal crown but now dressed in military armor. Report, Tae-min said as he took his position beside her. Commander Kethavar answered from his station. Long-range sensors detected the Devourer fleet 4 hours ago. 63 ships, larger than anything we've seen before. They've been feeding, Dr. Sojin said from the science station. Each ship they consume makes the others stronger. These are at least twice the size of the ones that attack the Kithira system. Tae-min studied the tactical display. The enemy was still 6 hours out, but their approach vector was clear. They were heading straight for the Nexus system, the strategic choke point that controlled access to both human and Ashanti space. How long until our reinforcements arrive? He asked. Admiral Kim's battle group is still 12 hours away, Captain Bo-Ram replied from her pilot station. The Ashanti Second Fleet won't be here for another 18 hours, so we hold alone until help comes, if we can. Veltara turned to address the bridge crew. I know this isn't how we planned it. We wanted more ships, more time, more preparation. But sometimes the universe doesn't give us what we want. It gives us what we need to prove who we really are. She looked directly at Timon. 7 years ago, a human soldier saved my life when he could have let me die. Today we find out if that act of mercy can save 2 civilizations. The next few hours passed in tense preparation. Fighter squadrons launched from the larger ships, forming mixed units of human pilots and Ashanti Voidwalkers. The Voidwalkers were strange beings, Ashanti who had been modified to survive in space without ships. They could fly between vessels and attack with directed psychic energy. Zethmira, the lead Voidwalker, floated beside Taemin's fighter as they formed up for the first wave attack. She looked almost human except for her silver skin and the way she moved through vacuum like it was air. Ready, human? She asked through the communication link, her voice carrying the musical accent of her people. Ready as I'll ever be, Timon replied. He was flying again for the first time since the war, and his hands remembered the controls like old friends. The Devourers came out of hyperspace like a plague of locusts. Their ships were even more horrible up close, twisted masses of metal and hunger that seemed to eat light itself. They moved with purpose, forming attack formations that showed tactical intelligence. All squadrons attack pattern Delta, Timon ordered. Remember, we're not trying to destroy them. We just need to slow them down until the device is ready. Dr. Sojin and her team had spent the last 2 months developing a weapon based on their discovery that the Devourers were uploaded consciousness. The consciousness disruption device could theoretically shut down their digital minds, but it had to be planted inside their mothership. The first wave of fighters met the Devourer screen in a storm of energy fire and explosions. Human plasma cannons combined with Ashanti beam weapons, creating new combinations that the enemy had never seen before. For a moment, it looked like they might have an advantage. Then the Devourers adapted. Their hull plating shifted and changed, becoming reflective to energy weapons. Their own weapons reached out with hungry tentacles of dark energy that could drain a ship's power in seconds. 3 human fighters simply stopped working and drifted helplessly into the enemy formation, where they were consumed. They're learning too fast, Captain Bo-Ram reported from her bomber. We need a new approach. That's when Engineer Young Six's voice came over the communication channel. I've got an idea. The disruption device works on neural networks, right? What if we could amplify the signal using the Voidwalker's psychic abilities? Taemin felt a chill of understanding. You want to turn the Voidwalkers into living transmission stations? Exactly. But they'd have to get close to the mothership. Very close. Zethmira's laughter echoed through the communication system. Human, you have interesting ideas. How close? Inside the ship's defensive perimeter. Maybe inside the ship itself. That's suicide, Commander Kethver said from the command ship. No, Zethmira replied. That's war. The plan came together quickly, born from desperation and the trust that had been building between the 2 species. While the main fleet kept the Devourer escorts busy, a small strike force would punch through to the mothership. Taemin would lead a squadron of volunteers to get the Voidwalkers close enough to amplify the disruption device. I should lead this mission, Queen Veltara said as they prepared to launch. No, Taemin replied firmly. You're needed here to coordinate the fleet. This is what I do. She looked at him for a long moment and he saw the same expression she had worn 7 years ago when he was trying to save her life. Come back, she said simply. I'll try. The strike force consisted of 12 fighters and 6 Voidwalkers. They flew straight into the heart of the Devourer formation, dodging energy tentacles and adapting weapons. 2 fighters were lost immediately, consumed by the hungry darkness. Another 3 were disabled and had to be abandoned, but they made it through. The mothership was even larger than the sensor readings had suggested. It was like flying toward a small moon made of twisted metal and malevolent intelligence. Weapon ports opened like eyes along its hull, tracking their approach. Remember, Dr. Sojin's voice came through their communication systems. You need to get the device within 500 meters of the ship's central core. The Voidwalkers can guide you to the right location. Zethmira flew ahead of Taemin's fighter, her silver form glowing with psychic energy. This way, she called. I can feel their minds all screaming together. They dove toward the mothership's surface, dodging defensive fire that could have cracked planets. The ship's hull opened to receive them, like a mouth preparing to swallow. But instead of being consumed, they flew into the mechanical interior of the vessel. Inside was a nightmare of organic technology and digital consciousness. Cables that looked like veins carried information instead of blood. Screens showed the memories of 1 billion consumed beings. The air itself seemed to whisper with the voices of the dead. "The core is ahead," Zethmira said, but her voice was strained. "Their minds are so loud, so hungry. I don't know how much longer I can shield us." Taman pushed his fighter deeper into the ship, following the Voidwalker's guidance. Behind them, the other survivors were falling back, overwhelmed by the psychic pressure. Soon it was just him and Zethmira, flying toward the heart of an ancient evil. The core was a sphere of pure energy surrounded by the uploaded minds of an entire dead civilization. They had been trying to escape death by becoming machines, but something had gone wrong. Now they existed only to consume, to fill the emptiness inside them with the matter and energy of other worlds. "Now," Taman said, activating Dr. Sojin's device. Zethmira spread her arms wide and let her psychic energy flow into the disruption signal, amplifying it beyond anything the device could do alone. The effect was immediate and devastating. The screaming minds of the devourers suddenly went quiet, their hunger replaced by something like peace. But the effort was too much for the Voidwalker. Zethmira's form began to fade as she poured her life force into the signal. "Go," she whispered to Taman, "before they recover." He wanted to save her, but there was no time. The mothership was already beginning to shut down around them, its systems failing as the uploaded consciousness lost cohesion. Taman flew his fighter out of the dying vessel just as it began to collapse inward like a star. The rest of the Devourer fleet stopped moving as their mothership died. Without the central consciousness to guide them, they drifted helplessly in space. The combined human Ashanti fleet moved in to finish them off, but there was no satisfaction in the victory. Too many good people had died to win it. Later, as Tamin sat in the medical bay having his wounds treated, Queen Veltara found him. "The Devourer threat is ended," she said. For now. There may be other fleets in the Outer Rim. We'll need to stay vigilant, keep working together." Taman nodded. "I think we can do that." She smiled, and he saw hope in her eyes for the first time since she had arrived at his depot. "Yes," she said. "I think we can." 6 months after the Battle of the Nexus, Taman Park stood on the observation deck of Haven Station and watched the sun rise over a new galaxy. The station was built where the Great Battle had been fought, a monument to cooperation and sacrifice. But more than that, it was a promise of the future. "The morning shift is starting," Queen Veltara said as she joined him at the massive windows. Below them, ships from both species moved in careful patterns, their crews working together on patrols and research missions. Timon smiled at the sight. "It still seems impossible sometimes. 6 months ago, we were ready to destroy each other. Now look at us. People can change," she replied. "Species can change. It just takes the right moment, the right choice. Taman thought back to that moment 7 years ago, when he had decided to save a dying enemy instead of letting her die. Such a small decision at the time, but it had changed everything. Queen Veltara had become a reformer because of it. The war had ended differently, and when the real crisis came, 2 former enemies had been able to stand together. "How are you feeling?" Veltara asked, noticing him touch the scar on his chest where Devourer energy had nearly killed him during the final battle. "Better every day. Your doctors are amazing. Ashanti healing technology combined with human medical knowledge. Another example of what we can accomplish together." They watched in comfortable silence as the mixed crews went about their work. Human engineers worked alongside Ashanti technicians, sharing knowledge that had been secrets for generations. Fighter pilots from both species trained together, learning each other's tactics and techniques. It wasn't perfect. There were still arguments and misunderstandings, but it was working. Dr. Sojin appeared beside them, carrying a data pad and looking excited. "I have the latest reports from the Outer Rim survey teams," she announced. "Good news or bad news?" Taman asked. "Both. The good news is that we found 3 more Devourer fleets and they're all dormant. Whatever we did to the mothership at the Nexus seems to have put the rest of them to sleep. And the bad news? They're not destroyed, just sleeping. If something wakes them up again, we'll be right back where we started." Queen Veltara nodded thoughtfully. Then we need to make sure we're ready. The joint research program is our best hope for finding a permanent solution. The joint research program was Taiman's idea, though he would never take credit for it. Scientists and engineers from both species working together to understand Devourer technology and find ways to defend against it. They had already made incredible discoveries. New energy sources, advanced materials, even insights into the nature of consciousness itself. Speaking of the research program, Dr. Sojin continued, we received another request for your expertise. The team studying Devourer neural networks wants to interview you about your experience inside their mothership. Taiman sighed. He had told the story a dozen times already, but he understood why they kept asking. He was one of only 3 people who had been inside a functioning Devourer vessel and lived to tell about it. I'll speak with them later, he promised. Dr. Sojin nodded and moved on to discuss technical details with the Queen. Taiman let his attention drift back to the view outside. He could see Earth in the distance, a blue-green dot that held 8 billion human lives. And beyond that, invisible but no less important, were the 40 worlds of the Ashanti Empire. 2 civilizations that had almost destroyed each other, now working together to face whatever the universe might throw at them next. It was a good feeling. There's something I need to tell you, Veltara said when Dr. Sojin had left. What? The High Council has voted to make our alliance permanent. Not just a military agreement, but a true partnership. Joint colonies, shared technology, combined exploration missions to new star systems. Taiman raised an eyebrow. That's a big step. Are your people ready for it? Most of them. There are still some who think we should remain separate, but they're a minority now. The victory over the Devourers proved that we're stronger together. And humanity? Admiral Kim has been working with your Earth Council. The vote is scheduled for next week, but early reports suggest it will pass. It was amazing to think about. 2 species becoming one people. Not through conquest, but through choice. The children growing up on Haven Station already showed what was possible. Human and Ashanti kids playing together, learning each other's languages, becoming friends instead of enemies. There's something else, Veltara continued, and now she sounded nervous. The High Council wants to offer you a position. Ambassador to Earth, with full diplomatic authority to negotiate for both species. Taiman was quiet for a long moment. It was an incredible honor, the kind of job that could shape the future of 2 civilizations. But it was also a huge responsibility. What about my freight business? He asked, half joking. Jinwoo can handle that. He's been wanting to expand operations anyway. You've already talked to him about this? I may have mentioned it in passing. Taiman laughed. Even as a queen, she was still the same person who had faced death with dignity and courage 7 years ago. What would I have to do? Build bridges. Help our peoples understand each other. Make sure the alliance stays strong even when things get difficult. And if I say no, then we find someone else. But I'd rather it be you. Taiman looked out at the ships moving in their peaceful patterns, at the station that had been built from the wreckage of war. He thought about the young princess he had saved and the queen she had become. He thought about Zethmira and the other brave souls who had died to protect 2 worlds. He thought about the future that was possible if people kept making the right choices. All right, he said. I'll do it. Veltara smiled, and he saw relief in her star-filled eyes. Thank you. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the dawn of a new age. Behind them, the station came alive with the sounds of 2 species learning to live as one. Ahead of them lay unknown challenges and opportunities that neither could face alone. But together, they had already accomplished the impossible. They had turned enemies into allies, hatred into hope, war into peace. And if they could do that, Taiman thought, they could do anything. So what happens now? He asked. Now we get to work, Queen Veltara replied. We have a galaxy to explore, mysteries to solve, and a future to build. And we have each other. In the distance, a joint human Ashanti patrol returned from the outer rim, their mission complete. The ships moved in perfect formation, their crews working as one unit despite the different worlds they called home. It was a beautiful sight and a promise of what was to come. The war was over. The real work was just beginning. Years later, when historians wrote about the moment that changed everything, they would focus on the great battles and the political agreements. But Taiman knew the truth was simpler. It had started with one choice, the decision to save a life instead of taking it. Sometimes that's all it takes to change the universe. One person choosing to be better than their enemies expect them to be. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that choice ripples outward until it saves everyone. Come on, Veltara said, heading toward the door. Ambassador Kim wants to discuss the new colony proposals, and we have a meeting with the Joint Science Council in an hour. Already putting me to work? Welcome to diplomacy, Ambassador Park. As they walked through the corridors of Haven Station, Taemin noticed how naturally the two species moved together now. Human children chasing Ashanti younglings in games that had no names yet. Scientists from both worlds sharing discoveries that would benefit everyone. Soldiers who had once fought each other now stood guard side by side. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. There would always be misunderstandings, conflicts, people who preferred the old ways of hatred and fear. But it was a start, and sometimes a start is all you need to change everything. The future stretched out before them, full of possibilities that neither species could have imagined alone. New worlds to explore, new friends to make, new challenges to overcome, and they would face it all together as one people under the stars. It was, Taemin thought, going to be quite an adventure.